In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Give without expectations, receive without resistance. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're exploring three vital themes: the importance of effective communication in leadership, mastering delegation for sustainable business growth, and building a culture of accountability and empowerment. Our guest today is Christopher Salem, a business acceleration strategist renowned for helping leaders and organizations craft a value proposition that truly resonates. An accomplished author and professional speaker, Chris' expertise spans customer-centric strategies that drive sustainable growth, customer loyalty, and profitability. Through his insights on aligning business objectives with meaningful impact, he empowers businesses to navigate today's ever-evolving landscape. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Christopher Salem, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
Sam, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. And we have both a personal and professional relationships. And obviously, giving your insights and your background, I think this will be a very insightful conversation. To start us off, please tell us more about sustainable success coaching and consulting.
Well, sustainable success coaching is set up to help small businesses, owners, as well as their companies, and this could also include companies as well. So I include SMBs, so that would be for small business, small company, and small and medium-sized businesses. And we help them to, solve challenges to create solutions from those challenges. So the primary goal is to help move a challenge to an opportunity. So if they want to increase revenue or profit, we have custom strategies in the areas of revenue and profit and help them to do that. We take a holistic approach in how we go about doing that. We don't put Band-Aids on things. So what we do is we first look at their structure. Where are the bottlenecks? A lot of times the bottlenecks are people itself. People are not leading by example. They don't understand their role and duties. They're not effectively communicating. So we worked on getting some structure around that and doing more engagement and unity. Oftentimes there's resources and systems that are not in place. This is why they're not doing certain things that are leading to the result they seek. So we work on that. Once we get that thing intact, we then work on creating more valuable customer client facing experiences. And as we do that, to increase sales and then increase revenue from sales. I also work on their value proposition, make sure that's aligned to their audience's challenges that could be better, the falsely seeking don't have. And then we can layer on top of that lead gen and SEO and sales and marketing strategies to now perform at a higher level in those effective value propositions. Thus, increasing revenue, increasing profit, increasing the KPIs that are important to them, and thus raising their business valuation. So at the time of exit, they will have a higher valuation to sell.
Very interesting. How long have you been helping SMBs, by the way?
I've been doing this now since going on about 12 years now full time, but I've done this myself in other businesses now for over 20 years.
Wow, very interesting. When you look at the ever-changing landscape of basically this very rapidly evolving business world, how do you see basically this evolution and how that affects small to medium-sized business, let's say compared to 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, right now we have so much technology now. We have so many systems and processes in place. And the key right now is to, for businesses to get ahead, they have to be able to work on their business, not in it. That's for the business owner. So the business owner has to know how to work on work on their business, not in it. So knowing how to delegate appropriately. Now that also carries down to the people that work for him or her as well. You also have to learn how to work on your role, just in it. So if people can do a better job of focusing on the priorities that truly matter and not getting caught on things that are not relevant, but knowing where to delegate. We can delegate more things than we could back 20 years ago because we got AI tech. We got certain types of resources, apps like Asana and Trello. There's so many different resources out there that we tap into delegating to make us more efficient and more productive in our role and duties. It's those businesses that really didn't gratify me that are going to come out ahead and be more productive, efficient, and profitable.
Sure. And I heard that saying in the past, obviously working on your business, not in your business. In your words, obviously, what does that mean? Tell me more. Just extend a little bit about your definition of that saying.
So working on your business means that you have to work on, if you're a business owner, you have to be working on strategies, new strategies that are going to continuously keep moving your business forward and upward. So if you're looking to increase revenue and profit to increase your business valuation, you got to be constantly working on strategies, being one step ahead of the curve as your industry changes, as your audience changes in terms of how they buy and purchase products and services. Because if you're constantly reacting, you're not going to be in the forefront. Now, when you work in your business, this means you're getting caught up in the day-to-day. You're getting caught up in a lot of things that can be delegated. And when you're getting caught up in the things that can be delegated, or a lot of the things that are not as important, it's taking your time and energy away that could be working your business forward in terms of strategy. So it's very important when you work on, you got to make sure you're looking for the right people. They work for you, it's a contract that are going to be helping you do the certain things in their role and do with your business. You have the right systems, process in place. That could be, certain types of technology, CRM systems, how you generate leads in your business, that type of thing. All of those things are very vitally important in making things happen. And also how you serve your customer. Now, don't get me wrong, the big technology in helping to serve your customer in terms of service and not taking away the human element, because the human element, it can display empathy, automated process, not so, but a combination of both can work very effectively to lead a valuable customer experience. So these are the things that we have to do to work on, not in it, that have helped move just about any business, no matter what that is.
Very interesting. And you mentioned something that I want to rebound on, which is, the best business owners understand that they can anticipate, perhaps, to be better prepared and not reactive towards any problem that emerge. Now, for those in our audience that might be looking to basically become better at such skills, what would you say a couple of resources to not only sharpen their intuitions, but how to delegate effectively in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things out there. Now, it depends on the size of your organization, but if you're a small business, there are apps like Asana that are great. Asana is a really nice app that can kind of break down tasks and projects into actionable steps. See, a lot of times people are operating in their heads. The business owner is operating in his or her head. Their team is working in their head. They think they know what they have to do, but what they're doing is they're getting caught up always in the control you can't control. And that's other situations and people. Now, when you get caught up in the control you can't control, you get into a reactive mode. You're operating from fear. You're operating from stress, anxiety, and you're losing sight of the things that you can control that are going to move you forward. But when you have a resource like Asana, it helps to keep you focused on the puzzle pieces you have in your possession rather than the pieces you don't. So this way you can work more effectively, to be more laser focused, have more clarity, and to execute to move the ball forward. So as new pieces come into your possession, through tracking through Asana based on who's responsible for what, when, in terms of their role and duties, these are the things that are going to help move you forward. Now, there are others out there, but I'm just saying that would be an example.
Right. No, absolutely. And when you're thinking about the meaning of delegation, this understanding in which you're building a team that march toward a singular visions. What's typically a couple of things that can help the people sharpen the vision so that it can be bought up by their organization and therefore better apply and implement it?
Well, what's very important in this process, Sam, is effective communication. See, many people think they're communicating effectively, but if I can go in and do an assessment, I can quickly, give them, insight that they're not communicating to the level they think they are. Most communication, if not all, is based on assumptions and speculation. You assume what I do and what I'm doing to help you do what you do best in your role, and vice versa. But oftentimes when things don't work out, and expectations, that big E word, expectations, that's why expectations go unfulfilled, and why we get upset when something doesn't happen, because we assumed some situation or some person or people were supposed to do this, this, and this. This is why effective communication is imperative. And what I mean by effective communication, not passive communication where you're saying yes to everything. There's some people out there that are yes people. They take on too much. They say yes to looking for validation, and they usually overpromise and then underdeliver. There are aggressive communicators, meaning that they tend to talk down to people. They tend to be perfectionists. They have a hard time delegating because they can't trust that somebody else can do it to the level they do. Those two styles of communication keep people stagnant, stuck, and constantly going through the same motion that doesn't produce results. If we can learn to be assertive, and assertive means that you are specific, clear, and concise in communication to yourself. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, and you know where you should emphasis on. You also understand that no matter who's communicating, whether you're the sender or the receiver, you are always responsible for the communication. Why? Because you can't control another person or situation. So I got to be responsible for the communication to be effective, whether on the receiver or the sender. So if somebody is what they get me in terms of communicating, I can ask them clarifying questions to get more information. So let likely greater expectations to fall through the cracks. I'm a big believer that we can effectively communicate and operate with intentions in the moment to what we can control. These expectations that are tied outcomes beyond their control. Those are the things that bring people together, allow things to be more seamless, and get and to navigate through challenges to turn them into opportunities and then results.
Right. What you're talking about is, in my opinion, it's called leadership to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Leading by example.
Leading by example, absolutely. When you're thinking of a small to business setting where there's typically a few key shareholders, a few key obviously leadership roles and C-suite titles. Not that that's the only thing leadership wise, obviously, but when you're in this emergence of building that successful teams, what are a couple of things that leaders can look in other people to be able to serve their mission and their vision as well as possible? Was there any patterns you saw to identify a leader effectively?
Well, here's what an effective leader does. Like, as I mentioned, effective leader understands the things they can control each day versus the things they can't control. Again, we'll sum it up. You can't control other people or situations. Once you get that very clear, you can't control other people and situations. Now that can shift our focus away from the expectation tied to the outcome. That operates from a level of fear. We can bring it into the moment from intentions where fear is reduced. We can control basically 5 things. Now, we can control more than 5 things, but I'm going to concentrate on 5 key areas that we could control as leaders every day. Number 1 is the communication to yourself and other people. Am I talking to myself or my inner champion or my inner critic? Am I being more assertive in my communication rather than being passive or aggressive or both? Meaning I'm looking to be as specific, clear, and concise as the sender or receiver, leaving no room for assumptions and speculation to make sure that the communication is so clear and specific that people are working together towards the common challenge or the challenge to turn into a result. We could control our behavior. Is our behavior alignment with our communication? Is it assertive rather than passive aggressive? There are people who are passive in their communication and then aggressive in their behavior. They contradict one another. And that was me 20 plus years ago. I'm a recovering passive aggressive. That does not lend well with meeting people, nor anything's done in an efficient way. Believe me, trust me, I learned the hard way. So is our behavior in alignment in a concerted way for communication? Number 3 is our attitude. It's happening for you, not to you. See, challenges, obstacles, problems are inevitable. They're going to happen. But instead of seeing them as that problems, see them as opportunity. Because without a challenge or an obstacle, you can't achieve a result worthwhile to, have gratitude. Think about anything you've accomplished in your business or life. Did it come easy? Did it mean everything you did worked out? No. You went through problems, challenges. So we have to use an attacking you. We are the victim. We use excuses. We point the finger at other people. We gossip. We complain. Where we can take that out of the business element. Now we can do a psychological workplace. We could create a place where people can lead by example, not being told what to do and so on. So those are 3 control. Number 4 is our emotions. How we respond versus react to situations and other people. Now, if somebody says something and I'm angry, okay, I'm angry. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to step that down. I'm angry. Although I'm going to react from, I'm going to process and to say to myself, okay, I'm angry. Can I take a breath and now respond to that person from a secondary nature? If I can, I'll remove this for 10 minutes. Maybe I have to sit on it before I come and respond to it, whether if it's in person or by email. So we can learn to respond, react. We're more likely to put ourselves in a place of helping to solve the challenge, to turn it into an opportunity and then a result, versus reacting to it, thus, fueling the fire, so to speak, to make it even worse. So great leaders respond and react. And then finally, our level of many people are busy, yet they're not productive. That's just a bit more procrastination. Am I laser focused on priorities that matter? The priorities that are truly are either uncomfortable, but yet I know they're going to be good because they're going to take me and my business from here to here. You're raising the bar. That's where my attention has to be. And I have to prioritize. I got to rank and prioritize which ones I can work on. And what can I work on what I can control and let go of what I can't control. Next, we'll work on the things that will supplement. They're important, but not urgent. But if I'm focusing on things that are important, not urgent, versus things that are important and urgent, then I got it back. And then finally, delegate everything that is important and urgent that will allow me to focus on the most important priorities. That means other people that have strengths in those areas that I know, they offset my weaknesses there, to leverage some strengths. Maybe it's an AI technology, maybe it's apps, other systems, resources that will help me focus more of my effort and most priorities there. And then getting rid of anything that it does not serve me or my business or other people. Why am I getting caught up? I'm scrolling through social media all day long. That's not a good use of my time. If I'm getting caught up in drama, most of the day, that's not going to serve me or my business. So I put up boundaries, or in this case, get rid of those types of things. So with that being said, that's when I can take action from the 4 pillars of success. Foundation, how I think, from a place of intentions, rather than issues in the moment, trusting the process on what I can control, letting go of what I can't. That's my foundation. Number 2 is preparation. I got to prepare. I got to break those goals and objectives with systems, activities, prioritize taking them accordingly. Again, I got to execute them, what I prepare. And then as I execute, then I can measure just what's working, what's not, and then repeat that process. Those 4 pillars of success, how I operate actions. And I can contribute those 5 things every day, letting go, keep 5 in other situations. If I now be all of that and do this for other people, they're going to hopefully do for themselves. Just like children learn what they were growing up from their parents or not. It's very similar with people observing youth. You're going to observe whether they know consciously You're going to observe your behavior, situation, dealing with that. They're going to observe attitude. They're going to observe how much versus react with your emotions and the action take. It's leading by example, and you're resourceful with that. Hopefully, you're going to roll off in the right way for people to do for themselves. I know that was what we did, but I figured I didn't give you all that information. It wouldn't tie it all together.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have a Japanese friend, and he said, Sam, you want to know something? In Japanese, chaos and opportunity is actually basically written the same way. And I don't want to butcher it, but basically they're very, very intertwined, basically, and I would say even connected to many ways. And it's so powerful because rebounding on what you said, the perspective because the perspective matters in this. We can both look at this exact same, basically, perhaps situations. You may call it a problem, I may call it an opportunity. So there's a lot of not only faith in yourself, but also in your team and in the vision you're bringing together, which is so powerful. When you're thinking of this, let me ask you this, do you have children, Christopher?
I have one son who's going on 17.
Beautiful, beautiful. So when you're thinking about intentionality, and this understanding of what you can control, what you can't control, does that also overlay with other areas of your life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as a father, as a husband, as a sibling, as a member in my community, as a neighbor, doesn't matter what hat I got on or what role or duties I'm doing at that time. This is 24/7. This isn't something that's situational. So what I just talked about, that process or methodology is 24/7. I mean, if it's going to stick and I'm going to be accountable for that, I got to I got to think differently to be it, to become it, and do it differently to have the results I seek from it. That's got to be consistent 7 days a week, 365 days a year, every day.
Right. And I always say this professionally, which is, every day is a Monday. This understanding that you treat every single day like a new, fresh opportunity to do great things. And to me, and perhaps I want to get your vision on this. One thing one idea that I love doing is, some people come to me very often and say, well, Sam, that's very hard though, right? It's very harsh to be present, to be intentional, to be faithful, to be respectful, and so on. And I say, well, sure, that's hard. But what I always thought to understand is, very typical, I'd say most of the time, you have to decide which hard do you want to have. Do you want to work hard and therefore live a peaceful and joyful and meaningful life, or you'd like to do basically the easy choice, but then you have a hard life financially, relationship-wise, perhaps health-wise as well if you're not taking care of yourself. So this balance towards what I'm doing, but also collecting the fruits of my efforts and enjoying them. How do you see those perhaps bridging together in some type of ways that people can accelerate their vision and accelerate their understanding that everything is hard if you think that it's hard. It's very much a mental thing. You're your worst enemy.
Yeah, I look at it this way. You got to look at it as a process. It's not going to happen overnight. So we're conditioned. We want the results now. We want to buy products and services that will make my problem go away. The thing is, that's not a reality. Okay? So once you get that in your head, that challenges are inevitable. You have to, that without a challenge, you can't have a worthwhile result. Plain and simple. All right. And anything that did come easy to you is not sustainable. So when we can learn that, and learn that everything is a process. Things don't happen overnight. We have to embrace suck. Doesn't mean that, again, we're human. Sometimes we're going to have moments where we may react to it. But it's okay. But we know we can now be conscious. I don't have to keep reacting. I can respond. So it's just that you never graduate in this process. It's not like because I've been doing this for 20 plus years that, oh, great, I don't have to. I can do this on autopilot. Oh yeah, I graduated from this years ago. No, it's ongoing. I could easily go back to the old way of how I did things if I got complacent with what I do. I have to remind myself every day I have a daily routine that I do. I do certain things that help me to keep my mind thinking this way. I can't just say, well, I already did it and now it's automatically changed. No, it's constant effort. So these are the things that, and I think sometimes people are conditioned, they don't want to do it, they don't want to put the effort, it's too hard, I want to evolve. Instead of wanting to evolve, embrace the process, embrace the process. Let the result be a part of your process. And just a change in thinking. I don't wake up and go, God, I want to buy that car, I want a car. You say, okay, I mean, the car, no problem. It's in 6 months. And I'm going to focus on the process, do these things that are related to that car, but I'm focusing on what I'm doing each day to what I can consider in the moment. I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm not sleeping. Don't care what happened a week before. Work out. I'm focused on that's all. And that's the thing. But I would say the way to kind of change your thinking, but try not to do that when it happens. So
You ought to fall in love with the process. If you have two people, one love the process, the only one is only there for results. The one only there for the result will be absolutely demolished because it won't, like you said, it's not sustainable. You won't be able to have the same amount of input for as long as the other guy that absolutely loved the process. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, which is, on the road leading to greatness, there will be many failures. See, when I was starting out, I think a lot of people still have this perhaps childish mentality, which is success and failure are two distinct roads, right? Either everything's going well and I'm going the right direction, or something's not going well and therefore I'm definitely not in the right direction. Unfortunately, we don't live in a movie. We don't live in the unicorn, basically, in universe where it's one or the other. Both are not only in sync, but ought to be there for us to be better people and therefore cultivate better outcomes. Let me ask you something. This when you're talking about suffering, might be professionally, might be also personally. I know you're obviously quite in shape. You go to the gym very often. What's your relationship with suffering and success? Tell me more about those how they intertwine.
Well, see, yeah, you can look at it. Like, I don't look at doctors and those for famous stuff, so words the hard body. I look at doctors and it's swallow and opposite. It's the all of that. Yeah, no, again, you can, it's how you look at it. Like, I don't look at suffering and struggle as literal verbatim what those words are defined by. I look at suffering and struggle as opportunities, because without them, now I can choose to struggle, I can choose to suffer, right? I can choose, okay, if I'm going through a difficult situation, I can choose to react and woe is me, why is this happening, blaming other people. I can choose that. And if that's what the choice you make, hey, so be it. There's going to be consequences to every choice. So that the consequences, we know what those consequences are. Instead, now I can look at the struggle and the suffering as an opportunity. I can say, okay, when I know what I can control here and what I can't control, when I can really, remind myself and focus on it, I can go to bed really saying I did everything to the best of my ability to work with what I had moving forward, and I have to let go. So I don't see it as suffering. I'm not saying I'm not and it doesn't bother me from time to time. Of course it does, but I just don't react from it anymore. I've learned to respond rather than and then I just keep moving forward. And as you get older, and I'm older than you, 57, I don't sweat the small things that I did when I was younger. Actually, I can that would affect the price I get a younger self or anybody younger than me. As you get older, like, you care about a lot of things that you would have normally gotten upset about. They're no big deal.
No, absolutely. It's so interesting because this is another famous quote that I absolutely adore is, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? That's Friedrich Nietzsche. And you can observe that with any singular high-performing person. It can be in business or in any other competitive field. This understanding that, again, once you fall in love with the process, you master it, you try to do your best, you sleep at night with a smile and be proud of yourself and so on, is such an interesting angle to life. And I want to ask you, obviously you're currently right now in Connecticut, United States. It's such a, let me call it, unstable. We live in a world where changes happens every single seconds. It seems like it's a very much of an ever evolving world. When you're thinking about how basically these world shifts, let's call them, interact with what you're trying to do, what you're trying to cultivate, do you ever feel a pressure to perhaps, I suppose, not only become the best version of yourself, perhaps a stress that is encountering the whole world, as perhaps some people are afraid of what potential outcomes may emerge?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, it comes down to it. I can react now to this, but is that really going to move me forward? Is that going to help me emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, even in my business? Probably not. No, it's just going to create more stress, anxiety. This is why we live in a world of, they call it, agility is the big word now, business agility. You got to be able to adapt, because there are so many things beyond our control that if you don't learn to adapt, you're going to get left in the dust. That's what the thing is. It's the people in the businesses that adapt to situations and things beyond our control that will come on ahead. So I learn how to adapt. That doesn't mean I'm conforming. I'm going to make a big difference. I'm not conforming, but I'm adapting to what it is. See, if I go into every situation and say, well, I think it should be this way, and then I have a team of people I'm working and they think it should be this way, are we going to get ahead of thinking that way when everyone's operating from the way they think it should be? No, that doesn't mean it's not. It's okay to look at things the way you would like it to be. That's fine. It's just knowing that we always operate. We got to operate what is. We have to do what's best for the situation collectively on who's involved. Not on the business owner. If it's on the business owner, doesn't mean I'm going to do it from my end. I might decide to do it what's best for the team, even though I may not personally agree with it, but I know it's best for the team, and I adapt to what is. Those are the businesses that I see that are going to get ahead with that type of reframing the way they look.
You strike me very much as a utilitarian, meaning if it's useful to you in your vision, keep it. If it's not, throw it away. Right? Very, very logical, perhaps quite manly way to look at life. When you're talking about, let's dive into it. When you're talking about adaptations, you mentioned technology at the beginning of this call. So you mentioned some tools that you think are obviously that you may be able to embrace for greater results. Even business agility, for example, was another thing you said. All these buzzwords, these keywords, perhaps. When you're getting into it and you're truly seeing at what does that matter inside of your business, can you tell me a little bit more about when you're thinking about what it is to be a flexible business or an agile business or an adaptable business? Tell me more about that relationship.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, you got to be looking at, hey, if things are working, then great, you keep doing that. But there's going to reach a point in time where what was working may not be working as efficiently anymore. That might mean that the technology you're using is now getting outdated, and now we have to upgrade. It was working and it served a purpose. It was producing, it was evident in our KPIs, but comes a time now we may have to now upgrade it. It's run its course. Now, many businesses operate from a reactive standpoint. They kind of like stick with something a little bit longer than they should. And by the time they make the change, they've reacted too late. That doesn't mean that they've reacted too late. That means they're going to go out of business. No, but they're always catching up. They're always in the catch-up mode. But it's those organizations that are always thinking one step ahead, the ones that are communicating at a high level, call it a daily huddle, that they're getting together at a daily huddle for 10, 15 minutes, talking about what they can control, what they can't, and how each of the enrolling students are coming together to take this challenge and turn it into a result. They could also be discussing, hey, things are working now with these systems processes, but we should be keeping our eye on new technology, new AI stuff, new other things that are coming down the pipe, just in case things they change, that these could be things that we can integrate ahead of time to be one step ahead. But it's those organizations that are constantly doing that and keeping up to speed on that, I find are going to come out ahead. It's in their operations, production, their service and experience, and of course, sales, revenue, and profit.
Everything will work until it doesn't. right? There's this great saying that we ought not to underestimate. We ought not to underestimate. And to me, it's so interesting because you're talking about, obviously, when you're talking about technology, you're talking about people. Those are all variables, right? Those are all variables that you may or may not be able to control. If you're doing a great job, perhaps you can control what matters, and that's what's most important. We hear this saying very often, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. We say very often that what we can measure, we can control. How important is you mentioned KPI also, which is very important. How important is it to measure, especially as a small to medium-sized business?
Very important. As I mentioned in earlier when I talked about the 5 things we can control with action, I gave the 4 pillars of success. Foundation and how we think and communicate. 2 was preparation. 3 was execution, and 4 was measurement. Without measurement, we can't determine where we are and where we're going. So a lot of times businesses will continue operating bottlenecks in producing that, half quality. They may, again, they're operating in problem, they're putting Band-Aids on. But if we can measure things, then we can adapt and make changes to make it better. And then we measure again, is it working? Moving things forward. So for me, that constant measurement is essential, not only at the organizational level, but also at the team level and the individual level. And for those organizations that have, a certain amount of people, when we look at performance feedback, in many organizations, it's once a year. You meet once a year with them and say, hey, you really did awesome. Or, you know what? You really blew it. And that's like, well, I didn't know I really blew it. I thought I was doing good. So, but if we have checkpoints, the measuring along the way, more consistent at the individual team and an organization, we can then pick up where things need to be better, to need improvements. Those are the things.
When you're talking about checkpoints, I completely agree, and that's how I interact also. How many of those checkpoints do you think are essential in a modern business?
Well, I think overall, Sam, they're essential. I think it all depends upon the organization, how many people, the size, what kind of business. And so I'm not going to say it's one size fits all, but I would say it's essential. So I always say that whatever it's going to take to help move things forward. So if it takes 40 for this company, it takes 60 for this company and 80 for this one, or 20, it doesn't matter. As long as those measurements are allowing you to make adjustments, deletions, or additions to things that have to be done.
Right, but it's definitely not one. Is the way. So, and that's super important. Like you said, I think part of being flexible is also understanding your needs. But definitely, and look at it this way. That's always how I do it as well. When things are going well, you want to have checkpoints to celebrate and to be able to embrace your people. But when things are not going so well, that's where you can obviously learn and better optimize, obviously, your process. So I used to say this, I was an athlete my whole life, but either I win or I learn, right? That's how I always envision the outcomes. And by the way, were you in sports yourself?
Yes, I was a baseball player for early in my career, up and then I had an injury, but didn't play to the level at college. But I played in a men's league in my early to mid 20s, and then got into softball in my late 20s to early 30s before my arm gave out. So I was a third baseman. So to this day, I can't throw anymore with this arm. I'm able to work out, but I don't have the agility. I can't raise this arm up higher than this. I can raise this up. Yeah, it's like.
Yeah, there's trade-offs in life, but then you understand this very well. Obviously, you win or you learn. I think is such a powerful mindset. When you're thinking about your journey as an athlete or even as a coach, do you see any patterns that overlays with the business world?
Oh, big time. Big time. I mean, I use a lot of analogies in sports. Like for instance, football. A lot of times, if you don't really understand football, you just think it's a bunch of guys out there with pads and helmets just beating the crap out of each other and so on. But it's a very strategic game. There's a lot of preparation that goes into a game. And you gotta also have to think on a whole different level. You look at a guy like Tom Brady when he was playing back in the day. Tom Brady wasn't the most physically gifted. Matter of fact, he was drafted in the 6th round in 199th pick in the year 2000. He didn't even start at the University of Michigan. But see, what Tom Brady had over any other quarterback ever played the game at a higher level was really thin. He had routine. He was very disciplined, consistent, and he would not attach himself to outcomes. He would be in the moment. He also he was very resourceful. So people around them, they didn't have to be superstars or the best talent, but somehow through his example and this resourcefulness, he could elevate his form at a higher level. And this is why he produced 6 Super Bowls in his career as a result of it, and not being the most talented quarterback when it came to skills or physicality or speed, because they were far exceeded contender. But yeah, you will go down as the greatest quarterback ever played the game because of this and how. So yeah, I correlate a lot of things in sports, especially from team development and through to producing results in the business world, to do it all.
Absolutely. And to us, and through our study of the brain in biology, we've been able to see that this is such an important factor. But connecting the process to an outcome in which is meaningful, most people, and especially in sales, and I see this problem way too often, unfortunately, especially in such a world where we know that it's actually factual, but people try to debunk it all the time. But whatever you think this best outcome is may not be what your clients or the people you're serving basically best outcome is. Typically, what we ought to understand, especially in both our basically world as they perhaps collide, right? Marketing, sales, business acceleration, and so on, is money. Typically, that's number one. Why we think that if they have more money, they will do better, and therefore they'll be more joyful. They will have more than what basically of what they want. But what we typically fail to understand is whatever that money can buy, perhaps the outcome in which you lead to them having more money is also extremely important. Maybe they can work a little bit less and enjoy more time with their family. Maybe they can pay for their kids' college tuition. Whatever basically that specific outcome is, it may not be sheer dollars, Benjamin Franklin's, as I like to call them, cheese, perhaps. When you're thinking about your work, and let's go a bit more holistic in your industry as a whole, how important to make sure that the people you're serving understand that you do understand the fact that their outcomes are meaningful, work on the business, but will also work on making sure that it's serving the people as well as possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is why that when people can learn to really own and be accountable for their role and duties, you're not just doing this for yourself, okay? But you have to do it for yourself because nobody can do it for you. You have to do it, so you have to be accountable and responsible for your role and duties. And then through a team agreement that when you commit to doing everything to the best of your ability in your control with your role and duties, is that going to help you? Yes. Is that also to complement somebody else you're working with on the same team or maybe another department, and upon if you have another department in your company? Yes, because everything that we do in each of our role and duty, when we're responsible on the team level and through our team agreements, we can complement each other's role and duties together as a team. Well, we're going to move the ball into the zone more often now.
Beautiful. And one thing that we hear a lot of conversation about, and I'd love for you to be able to clarify some of these things, is this concept of business organization. Some people talk about hierarchy. Some people talk about this concept of circular organizations. Let's cut to the chase here. When you look at the successful business that you work with, what's typically the structure that they operate in for maximizing success?
Well, I mean, it really varies for, different organizations, but, everybody is obviously, they want to produce more revenue. I mean, that's ultimately, they want to produce, a good product. They want to get out and increase revenue. But what they sometimes lose sight of is, again, the people involved, the process. And a lot of times they will maybe overwork people, or they'll put too much on a certain person, not taking into account, person's personal life. They're not doing this intentionally, but oftentimes they're not looking at, are we really leveraging this person to their strengths more than the weaknesses? When you leverage somebody to look at their weaknesses, you're not going to get as much production out of them. So while producing revenue and net profit is ultimately the biggest goal we should have as a company, yes, to get it. But if we're not mindful of the things that are leading up to that, our people, our in process, in taking time, knowing when to pull back, when to move forward, when to adapt, then those outcomes are not usually going to be as sustainable. We're going to have more problems because we might have people that might quit, might be burned out, might not be doing what they normally would usually be doing because we're kind of coasting right now. So we got to be really on top of these things. So I'm a big fan of consistent training, awareness to training to help people keep this top of mind. But, a lot of companies don't say we don't have the budget for it. But I say, well, and you don't have the budget to, sustain your people, sustain your process, and grow your business. Because you're going to be losing more money on lost opportunities, turning through customers, low retention with employees, high on business. What are you doing there? Look at that. A lot of times they don't see that. They're just seeing the short term thing, and that's when number one students in with businesses. They don't see the big picture. Most of them don't.
Wow, that's super interesting. What you're talking here is obviously the cost of opportunity, right? We'll take a short term, perhaps bumps, whatever. It seems like it's a financial bump in this case, but for long term, better success, better retention, and therefore better cash flow. How can one identify, obviously without your help, but they can also hire you? That will be perhaps much easier. But how can one identify when it is a better chance to be a positive, basically, opportunity cost instead of a negative one? Do you see any patterns to enlighten us?
I always say, Sam, that could be any day. So I always say we got to be constantly on top of that every day, looking for those opportunities. Where can we get better? It's not about being the best. It's about being better. Where can we get better? Where can we get better with technology, better with better systems and flow? Where can we, improve on the strengths of our people to leverage more output and production? Where can we minimize people's weaknesses? Not to enable them and keep, make their job just easy to make them easy. No, but to have them step up in what they do best. Is that going to be always easy? No. Is it going to be perfect with every person in every process that you work? No. But it's just like in baseball. Are you going to be batting 1,000? No, you're never going to bat 1,000 unless you only been off the bat once and you got a hit. Okay, then you bat 1,000. Bat 2 or 3, 4, 5 times. Yes, that average is going to come down. But if we can now go from batting 220 to now batting 320, well, it's a lot better in 220. So if we can keep moving that up, well, things are working. So I find the organizations that are on top of that are proactive. And again, that comes down to really having daily huddles, making sure we have effective communication. We understand our role in duties. We don't assume and speculate, not only your own, but each other. And we have team agreements in place so that sometimes we have to start outside of our role duties to do something. So I'll give you an example of that because a lot of people don't understand team agreements. Here's just a trivial thing in team agreement. Nothing. Let's just say we have a great room in our company, and now that there's some garbage that's overflowing in the break room, the service that nobody comes to that week, for some reason, didn't come for whatever reason. Now most people don't. Then it's disgusting. Somebody ought to take that out. But nobody does because it's not my role or nor my duties to do so. But somebody's got to do it. So they're always doing this. But instead, what if we had a team agreement that said on Mondays, if the garbage is overflowing and the service can't be there to take it out, then John picks up the garbage. If it's Tuesday, it's Sarah's response. So this is what team agreement is. It's like football. If a cornerback is covering a receiver and the quarterback trips and falls down, and now the receiver is open. Does the safety go, oh, that's not my responsibility, and just say, well, the corner trip, that's his fault, and now they score a touchdown? No, the safety is going to pick up the slack where the movement went down to cover the receiver. This is what team agreements are all.
And that's so important because, like you said, I think this is why it's so interesting to make overlays with sports. Business is a team sport. Business, nobody basically gets to a point where they have some solopreneurs that does very well, but it's extremely rare. Most organizations that reach that 7-figure, definitely 8-figure mark are organizations in which empowered people, and that's your strongest assets. And in order to take care of that stuff, of basically that most valuable assets, there's one business study that I would like to reflect on with you, if that's possible. It's a business study that basically showcased that 22% of basically people in the United States, there was I think it was reporting over 10,000 people, would accept a smaller salary for a company in which empowered them personally with self-improvement, a more accommodating basically workplace and so on. How does those key metrics also affect your work as a business accelerator?
Well, I think they affect you in a major way. I mean, Sam, do you realize that sometimes everybody would like to get a raise, right? We live in an economy with high inflation. I'm sure it's the same happening in Canada as well. But do you realize that sometimes a simple recognition of thank you, I appreciate what you've done this week, help our team and to help our clients by doing this, and this. That compliment alone could go up a lot longer to get somebody to keep stepping up and doing more and now going and do this than just here's a couple $1,000s more you pay for, but a lot of companies don't do that. So when people feel appreciated, they feel like you have their back. A lot of times they feel a lot more than anticipated, not just based on money. I'm not saying you shouldn't get people raises or credits too, absolutely, but it's more than that. People want to feel like, hey, I'm doing something for it. Wow, being recognized. You don't want to enable people. I'm not saying you want to validate. That's not what I'm saying. That's a codependent trait. But it's giving credit due when it's doing people step up. So we can create an environment that encourages people to own their responsibilities, but then do a team agreement to step up. Outside of that would require those have to be.
No, absolutely. And Carnegie said something that I absolutely adore, which is the favorite word of anyone is their own name. And the reason why he said that, and that's obviously in How to Win Friends and Influence People, is so valuable for the big organization that you work with. We typically say, and I just want to clarify with you and see if it's also something that you believe is true or perhaps a little bit too cliche. But we often say that they're treating their employees like they're numbers, right? They're simply numbers on a basically a payroll sheet. For those bigger organizations, is that something that they need to be a little bit more aware in such a diverse and such a I suppose pro-employer workplace, to actually take some time, like you said, to actually say thank you and address them by their name and making sure that they are embracing in the bigger grand scheme of things. How important is that for impacting bottom lines?
It's so important, and I'll give you an example. And a matter of fact, I was just out to dinner a few weeks ago with my wife and a person she works with and her boyfriend. And I was talking to the boyfriend. He was asking me what he do. I'm a business acceleration strategist, professional speaker. I work with a lot of organizations. We're talking about this. We're talking about her. He said, "Oh my God," he goes, "I love this." He goes, I worked at a company about 5 years ago. This would be before COVID, 5-6 years ago. And he was hired to come in to lead a team. And the first thing he started doing is he got to know people. He got to know their name, a little bit about what was important to them, and he would touch on those things each day. And every morning he'd greet them to say, "Hey, good morning. How are you doing? How's your weekend?" Or to thank them for certain things. And the guy that hired him up on this and said, "Why are you doing it?" And he said, "Well, because it's something that I feel that I like to. It makes me feel good, and I think it probably makes a whole person feel that they're that you're wanted here and that you're appreciated for what they're doing. Just what you don't have to do. And said that to me is going to motivate. So I mean, you got to focus. You need to do better. When you said, what do you mean? I'm always got to point out what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right. And he said, yes. And he said, if that mandatory, then let's talk. If it's not mandatory, and I can continue to what I'm doing, just let's just see what happens. And sure enough, there wasn't need for it, and he kept doing what he was doing. And over the next 2 quarters, that guy that saw an increase in less absenteeism, higher levels of engagement in production, and people stepping up. And he goes, "Holy cow, you're right." So the guy was humble because he had been taught, you only get on people when you're not doing something right, not when they're doing something right. So yes, in essence, I'm not going to say it works 100%. And I can say for the most part, you will see it increase in your.
Absolutely, that's such a beautiful example, and it's also an example of being able to be humble and being able to embrace basically everyone's perspective, especially when it's again impactful and effective. One thing that I want to quickly glimpse on is you are obviously a professional speaker now for what seems to be many years. When you're thinking about and professional speakers, by the way, we didn't used to call it this way, but we have professional speakers for now centuries, right? And overall just leaders, and how important basically speaking is. When you're thinking about your relationship of what meaning is brought behind your speaking engagements, how do you feel like a leader can better themselves speech-wise to be able to empower their people, not only through effective communication, but perhaps with self-empowerment, with the understanding that it's absolutely a must-have for any organization to grow?
Well, I mean, as a professional speaker doesn't mean you have to be a professional speaker, but I feel that learning public speaking skills can significantly increase any role that you have. Reason why is that when you learn how to communicate effectively, you're not telling people what to do, when to do it, how to do it. You're learning how to connect where people are. You're able to connect with them on a subconscious level. You can share versus tell. You can ask questions to get more engagement with people. I can disguise what I want to get across to people, the impact I want to get across in a question. So that way now subconsciously they're thinking about that, and now they got to answer it. So now they're encouraged and empowered to answer something that they may realize. So if I'm looking to, maybe elevate performance in somebody, but if I tell them how, when, or why to do it differently, they might get defensive and go, "Oh, who's he telling me that I'm going to do things to the best of my ability?" But if I disguise in a question, that person might say, "You know what? And this is what they're saying to themselves. I could probably do better than that." And now they can, because they've empowered that person to say that for themselves. I didn't tell them what to do. So they're more on the offense. So it uplifts me, it encourages me, it empowers me. And I find that we can listen. We have 2 ears, one mouth. We get questions and listen more. If we can listen between the lines, we could pick up. It's really important to people. What is the challenge that would be better for them? The things they're looking to generate in terms of results. I might pick up things that the person may need help with, or they're afraid to say anything because they're fearing that you could look them as incompetent, stupid. You might fire them as multiple. These are the things where public speaking skills, no matter what role or duty you have, doesn't mean you have to be speaking in front of a group of people at a conference or a company, but just doing it internally with the people you work with can significantly change a lot of things. No doubt about it.
Sure. And to me, it all comes down to this idea of let them sell themselves. It's this question-based, basically, interrogation perhaps process. It's effective in a sales scripts, no doubt, but it's also very effective in any communications because it gives basically your interviewee, the person you're talking with, the chance and the ability to actually, like you said, encompass that thoughts internally to actually sell themselves on the idea that it actually makes sense. Perhaps like I should work on this. And it's a very non-evasive way to actually have very, very effective changes. And when I talk about change, to me, an idea that is super important is micro changings. Sometimes I'd say most people that I've met are afraid of change. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, most people are afraid of change. This is why people avoid, look at the things around. Why do people, end up maybe where drinking becomes a problem? They turn to drugs. They overeat. They eat fast foods. They could become sexually addicted to pornography. They could gamble. All of these things are just a byproduct of escaping and going around these challenges and change that they don't want to face. But the thing is, change is inevitable. It's going to happen with or without you. When we can learn to adapt to the change, not to what you think it should be, or to what you think or what it is, that and where you can maximize it to the best of your ability, you're going to find out it wasn't as scary as you thought. It wasn't as hard as you thought. And you're going to build better, more strength, more endurance, all of the above. At least that's what I was a key success. I resisted change for the first 2 years of my life. I learned art leaving, and the last 27 years, complete opposite.
Right. It's so impactful and so beautiful how these micro changes on top of one another is just as a reaction chains truly not only empower yourself but also the way you look at the world. I have this beautiful idea which I'm sure you agree with, which is actually Jim Rohn, which had you don't see the world for what it is, you see the world for who you are. And this is such a powerful perspective. When you're thinking, you're obviously an outstanding thought leader yourself, and a father and husband, and a leader in your industry, and so on. If you were just starting out again, what would be a couple of things that you will tell your younger self to accelerate that journey to be that greatest leader?
Yeah, I would just say that again, it's one step at a time. Don't try to change. Change doesn't happen overnight. So it's just, you got to embrace the process. And I can tell you the hardest part of that is starting and showing up. I can remember when I first started my daily routine back 30, well, God, how long has it been now? Almost 26 years ago now. It's been a while. And I had to set an alarm because I couldn't get up early. That wasn't normal for me. But now I've been getting up at 4 a.m. for many years. I just pop off. Whereas back then I had to get an alarm clock and I didn't want to get up, but I would just sit and get up anyway. Put my feet on the ground, I'm up. I make my bed and meditated. Now, I was born with ADHD, so somebody like me to sit idle for even a minute and kind of be in my, kind of meditate, that was not easy for me. I had racing thoughts. I needed to move. I couldn't sit. And yet something said I had to use discipline. I had to lighten up. For 9 months, I could not get into a meditative state, but I kept doing it. I kept doing it. And eventually, I got into a meditative state. Now, that was many years ago. I can do that routinely now. But that was the hardest part. And most people don't get out of the gate. This is why New Year's resolutions never work. You start for a week or two, and then it snows, and it's cold out. I'll go tomorrow. Or never comes. So that first year, I think the first year is always the make or break in anything that's going to take you where you want to be. That you got to have a daily routine that's going to help you personally, professionally to move forward.
One day or day one. That's how you want to see it. Mr. Christopher Salem, was such a pleasure to have you on the Meaningful Podcast. Any last word you'd like to share for our audience?
Yeah, I always like to leave, Sam, a quote of mine that was a game changer in my life, and perhaps it could be for you. And the thing is, you can't just listen to hear it and sound, oh, that sounds nice. But I mean, you got to really break it down and start applying every day. Give without expectation. And what that means is you want to give from expectation, from empathy and kindness, not pleasing and enabling. Pleasing and enabling keeps people stuck. So you don't have to constantly do for people. Be the example and be a resource for them to do themselves. How you give without expectation? Do your communication to yourself and others, your behavior, attitude, your emotions, and your action. Be an example and a resource for that for others to do for themselves. Now, when it comes back to you from somewhere else, as long as it serves you to fill your cup, receive it without resistance. Don't block it, receive it. So when you fill your cup, you can give more without it. You can't give from an empty cup. And many people that are doing this innately are doing it from an empty cup. You're not helping them, you're not helping yourself. Give without expectation, receive without resistance.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.